Right. All right. About 25 years ago, Tim Berners-Lee wrote an important paper about, you know, the web and how it could be sliced and diced and all that. And it took a long time to get to a new place where we have what some people call Web 4 today. And today we're going to talk about that. We're going to see how the web has changed due to AI and what's possible now that we have a new way to look at websites and web information. This might be a little nerdy. It's good for those people who do a lot of research on the web. So stay tuned. Who are you?
Kingsley Idehen, founder and CEO of OpenLink Software.
Yeah. And, you know, we're talking about the Tim Berners-Lee's paper. How do you know, how does the web changing today because of AI?
Well, when Tim Berners-Lee, Jim Handler, and Aurel Silla wrote the Semantic Web article in Scientific American 25 years ago, the fundamental message was, although the web had taken off, it was already mainstream in the sense that we could all open web pages. What they were trying to articulate is that there was much more to the web than what was being experienced at the time, and that those links connecting documents could actually do much more. They could name anything, and anything included different entity types and relationship types. So a link became another way of indicating a relationship between two things rather than two documents.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, the power in that vision didn't manifest as expected due to fundamental difficulties with the kind of user interface that would be required to have the same impact that the Netscape Mosaic browsers had on HTML when introducing the basic web. So, yeah. The great thing about the Mosaic Netscape HTML browsers is that they brought the power of hypertext to the masses. But what most people don't understand is that hypertext also went through a 25-year odyssey before the Mosaic moment. People don't really realize that. They just realize there was a web explosion associated with the Mosaic and sort of Netscape browser. And so we're at a very similar point right now where RDF, an abstract language for describing entities, has now reached a point where it has a complementary client or a killer client in the form of LLM-powered AI agents. Because LLMs deal with the fundamental hurdle, which is the use of natural language as an additional UI UX component that's integral to computing. So once people can speak in multilingual and multimodal forms with a computing device and have it operate on data, information, and knowledge, it changes the dynamics of the original promise. So that's you know,
keep in mind, he wrote that paper before Web 2 was announced. I was sitting next to Tim O'Reilly in 2005, after, you know, 4 years after Tim Berners-Lee's paper. I heard Tim Berners-Lee give a talk on this, and it was very hard to grasp. Because back then we had a very simple web that didn't have a lot of movement on it. It wasn't very dynamic. That's what Web 2 really brought was, oh, you could have a database feeding your website, changing it, right? And making it interactive. But it was like what Tim Berners-Lee was talking about was like way ahead.
Yeah, of course.
And now we're
because he understands his creation, right? Yeah. He understood the creation. But yourself, you know, like I said, you know, on the back of, say, Dave Weiner with Radio Userland and blogging.
A whole bunch of others like Doug.
Yeah, but that was important in the sense that addressed the difficulty. There was a read and write difficulty, first and foremost. People wanted to be able to write stuff with ease and share it with ease. And so that first incarnation, the blogging, you know, the blogosphere at the time addressed that need. Yeah. But unfortunately, over time, it was hijacked, and then Web 2 became this, you know, silo where people contributed content, platform providers monetize the content at the expense of the content producers. But even more importantly, which is going back to what the semantic web was always about, is that identity is an integral part of the system. But by skipping the identity issue, it then meant that the contributors of content in Web 2.0 lost control over their identity, lost control over their profiles and their preferences, you see. And so the end result was you produced a lot of content. It went into a system that algorithmically ordered what was presented to whom. So the distribution powers of these content or service providers changed the dynamics of the original vision of the web. And then the semantic web vision as an antidote to some of this, or a counterpoint to say, here's how we do things the right way, was lost because it didn't really have a user interface to simplify its core value proposition.
Even something simple like back when I started blogging in 2000, so right around this time, right? You'd write a post about Dave Weiner. Well, I had to put a manual link to Dave Weiner in that article for the reader to click on who is Dave Weiner and go off and check out who Dave was. And if I didn't do that, you would just be reading me talking about Dave Weiner.
Just literals. They're just, just a phrase, Dave Weiner, but exactly. And the irony is, if you think about what's happened as Web 2.0 deteriorated the original vision of the web, it's become harder and harder in some of these platforms to use hyperlinks to refer to things. So if you use a hyperlink, maybe outside of comments in some cases these days, the algorithm works against you. Right? And that's the most basic thing. The most basic thing you can do on the web is to refer to something using a hyperlink. And you're discouraged. And likewise, a hashtag. Woe betide you if you use a hashtag. And that's another way of tagging things. So, so anyway.
Back then, we were in a world where I worked for a computer programming magazine back then, and we had one of the first websites in 2004. So after this paper came out, and my publisher said you're not allowed to link off a site, right? So you had all this belief about how you would keep a reader on your site and not show them oh, there's a good article about Dave Weiner over here, or here's a profile about Dave Weiner over here. I mean, 2001 was before Twitter, before Facebook, before
absolutely
LinkedIn, before Reddit.
Some of those weren't even ideas at the time. They weren't even ideas.
But now we have a new world where AI can read, even if I don't link to Dave Weiner, right? It just sees the name Dave Weiner, and it can do a lot.
And it would generate the links. It would generate a link for you. So not only can it write in a variety of formats, using a variety of notations, it can produce a useful document with appropriate referencing. So referencing to individuals, referencing to sources, and so on. But another tension, I spoke about the language tension regarding this semantic web. There's also a bigger tension. The biggest tension of all has been the business model, meaning that, you gave me the example of not being able to link in 2004 while working for a publisher, or a publisher frowning. So here's the funny thing. The Web 2.0
2000, because blogging actually is what changed the belief system that you shouldn't link off site. Because blogging, I worked for Dave Weiner in 2001, right? And he had a ping server, and all the blogs that published would ping that server.
Yes, of course,
say, hey,
of course. Exactly.
Well, let me tell you, because I watched him work, right? And he would just watch that ping server and see, oh, Evan Williams just pinged with a post on a blog, and then he would click the link and go and read what Evan Williams published, right? And we had and that. And also every time I link, let's say I wrote a blog post about you in the early days and linked to you, it would show up on your refer page.
Exactly.
In your blogging tool, you would have a refer page.
Absolutely, yes.
Right. So you could see, oh, Robert Scoble wrote about you, right? And you could click the link and go see what I wrote about you.
Absolutely.
And that created the blogging community,
Yes.
because now we could all link to each other and
Yeah.
see who was publishing and see who was talking about us, because we're all narcissistic and self-interested, right? You know? So if you're talking about me, I want to know about it, right? I
Yes.
want to go read
Yes.
what you said about me. But that
Yes.
created a community. And right in the late 90s, right, Google was started, right?
Yes.
And Google came out in 98, right?
Yep.
And as Google's algorithm worked very differently than what came before, because like
Yes.
everybody was using Alta Vista or
Alta Vista. Yes, I remember.
Yahoo to search,
Yes.
and Yahoo actually had humans indexing the web and making a list.
Yes.
Alta Vista had a computer indexing the page, and that was pretty good, but it was using the metadata underneath the
Yes.
page to figure
Exactly.
out what the page was about so it could link him. Well, that was
Yes.
easily gamed by the porn industry, because right, if you search for I had a big website back in late 90s about Microsoft Net Meeting, and if you search Microsoft Net Meeting, you would see my site #1 on Alta Vista and a porn site #2, and my friend Brian Sullivan, who had the second largest net meeting site, #3. When Google came out, there was no porn. In fact,
Exactly.
I asked the two guys who started Google, you know, how did you do that? And they're like, well, we use linking to
Yes. Entity ranking.
analyze the page differently than
Yes.
Alta Vista did and make the results set.
It
And
was the first
bloggers,
algorithm.
this is why so many blogging businesses started in the mid 2000s, right? TechCrunch and Huffington Post and
Yep.
all sorts of,
Yep.
Engadget, Gizmodo,
Yeah.
all sorts of
I know
businesses.
every single one of them.
Yeah, because we were there.
Yes, exactly.
And those all happened because blogging, because of the infrastructure of blogging, we would all link to each other.
Yeah.
Right, because I would see you're writing about me
Yep.
or writing about
Yep.
something I care about,
Yep.
and I would link with a link in my blog to you, and that would show up on your refer page, and it would
Yep.
show up on the ping server. And so we all were a community linking to each other, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Google loved us in the early days because they were
Yes.
using
And
links.
exactly.
They were using links, and so the
Yes.
bloggers moved up the page, right?
Yes.
Very rapidly, because we had
Absolutely.
links, and the pros, anybody working on a computer or a magazine or a newspaper back then, they weren't allowed to link out off property, right?
Yeah, exactly.
treated
Exactly.
the customer as a roach motel. And
Exactly. So they're
it's important to
downline.
understand all this early history, because now we don't need to link to each other anymore.
Well,
Our AI will find you, you know. I mean,
well,
I'm analyzing 40,000 posts a day with AI, and it's building a whole bunch of stuff. And I guess that's where I wanted to see, maybe separate the conversation, because you're building a business on this, and you're showing off a new technology that really is changing how the web works, right?
I'm trying to get everybody to understand what the web offers. So in a
Yeah.
sense, I'm just an example of a business. And I'm someone who's really passionate about it, saying, well, the pie is massive. It's
Yeah.
absolutely massive. So it's not about owning it. But I do want the world to really understand what is possible and that is available to everyone fundamentally, right?
Yeah.
So the difference between myself and some other, or a business, and say our business, is really the ability to harness what the infrastructure provides. But the infrastructure is there for anyone to use. And in this session, one of the things I wanted to do is just show what that infrastructure makes possible based on what we've been discussing. Because
and we know the world has changed, because now you can upload a PDF or a video.
absolutely,
and you can talk to my videos. As soon as this video is up on X, you can go underneath. You could click the three dot button, or the Grok button, and Grok will analyze what we're talking about a little
and
bit.
that's what I do.
And
I do that a lot.
And I do it even deeper, right? Then you can ask it, please write a report about this video, about what you learned by watching this video, because Grok is the first viewer, the first person, the first thing that watches this video when I upload it to X is Grok itself. And it does a really amazing job of telling us what's going on. And then you can take it further. You can talk to the video,
But
which is really
even that,
crazy.
it's all crazy. But here's the thing. Here's the thing. What is remembered? You see, remember, there's a lot of content coming like this. And so you can do this with Grok lots of times, even in an hour. But one of the dangers is, okay, but what do we retain? What do we remember? The human brain is a sponge. It's there to remember things somewhat episodically, right? But now we tend to just see things as they just fly by. And then we lose the ability to remember, recall, and then ultimately it kills curiosity, right? We're becoming curious because we're used to instant gratification.
Yeah, dopamine
right?
hits.
Yeah, and we, in a sense, one of the things about AI that tends to
outrage, right?
Yeah, but the thing is, the thing about AI that, in a sense, makes me giggle from time to time is that beneath the AI messaging, right, there's this human quest. You talked about human vanity and human narcissism, is that human beings want to be experts in any subject matter with zero investment in the acquisition of expertise. Think about that. So they want to be an expert in anything, but they don't really want to invest any time.
We want to be
in acquiring
Neo
expertise.
in the Matrix, where he downloads the ability to fly a helicopter in a second, and all of a sudden he can fly a helicopter, right?
Exactly. So because of that, though, the human being is gradually or dangerously losing the ability to extract knowledge from the feeds that are going by and persist in that knowledge for recall, whether that recall gives you competitive advantage, makes you feel, it doesn't really matter, but we're used to storing knowledge. We build on knowledge. We exist based on, the knowledge that we've acquired through our travels and experiences. And the danger is that that's going away. And so when people talk about AI replacing human beings, I don't really believe a tool made by man will replace man, but man could deteriorate to the point where the replacement is just natural, because you've lost all utility, right? You've lost all distinguishing utility, and so you're not your utility is questionable when it comes to optimizing a system, right?
Yeah,
exactly. So a lot of what I want to talk about and show is saying, well, here are the tools. Here's how we can still be human, cost effectively, harnessing the magical power of this infrastructure that has been somewhat mangled for years, that is much more powerful than most people realize if you just understand what it is. And it's all about, hyperlinks. So maybe we jump into a demo.
Yeah, let's see what this new web looks like, because it's quite different than the Mozilla 1994, right?
Yes. Oh, yes. So, the backdrop here is that LLM. So this is the original. You can see this okay, right?
Yeah. You might hide the window.
Okay. Let me do that. Yeah. All right. So this is the original Semantic Web article, circa 2001. And so this is a PDF rendered through my browser right now. And it has a lot of information about, what's possible. So you got this, the journey of Lucy through the healthcare system and all of that, a calendar and so on. But an LLM has the ability to allow me instruct using natural language how I want to extract knowledge in this document for persistence, recall, and reuse as and when I need it. And as and when I need it means, in many cases, having another agent go to my knowledge base when a question comes by. So here's the first thing that happens, right? So I have a skill. It's a skills.md compliant packaging of a set of procedures. So it's all in natural language. It's open source. And all I tell it to do is, given here's a document of interest, generate an HTML document based on knowledge that you're going to extract from the document represented in RDF. And that could be in RDF total, that could be JSON LD or any other notation.
What is RDF for people who are just growing up today and they don't know?
They don't know what?
What is RDF?
Oh, good question. Resource description framework. So just like you have HTML as a markup language for representing the structure of a document, RDF is really an abstract language for describing anything.
Yeah.
And the key thing about RDF, when you apply what I know as linked data principles, is that you can describe anything using a subject predicate object structure where hyperlinks play the role of words. So, in a normal human sentence, you have words occupying the subject, the predicate, and the object slot, or you can say noun, verb, noun, right, as a basic sentence structure.
Yeah.
Those words are replaced by hyperlinks. So a
Got it.
hyperlink denotes the subject, denotes the verb or the relationship type, and then the object or the noun. So you just got a triple, right?
So you built
Connected.
you built an extension for like Chrome that takes
Nope, nothing. I did those. We built those many years ago, but not that important anymore in the age of LLMs. But yeah,
well, what you're about to show me is you're taking this old PDF and you're RDFing it. You're you're changing it with AI to be a lot more interesting.
Yeah. So what I'm doing is something like this. So I brought up this is Cloud Cowork as an example. So this is, so here's just an example of the kind of prompt. This is for a different post, right? But you can see what I'm saying. I'm simply saying, now generate an HTML infographic and associated RDF for whatever, whatever document is at that location on the web, right?
Yep.
And I'm saying, I presume this will be using the very latest skills edition, meaning I've been editing it along the way. So you better make sure you're using the very latest edition. But the skills file itself, that is just a markup file. And I can come back to that a little later. Now, if I switch over and go to Cowork, right? I'm doing exactly the same kind of thing. Now, all you're seeing in this particular case is after I've generated my knowledge base, I'm just asking some questions to make sure it all hangs together properly. But the key thing is, whether I'm in Codex or whether I'm in Claude's Cowork, both of these tools are working with the skills. And likewise, if I jump to my terminal window, give me a second. And in this case, you're saying the same thing, but in this case, here's what I'm doing. I have Claude Cowork as my AI agent or my harness around an LLM, but the actual LLM that I'm using is DeepSeek. You see that?
Yep.
So all of my interaction is no different than if I was using Claude with, say, Sonnet 4 or Opus 4.7. But in this case, I've switched that around. I've switched out the LLM and I'm using DeepSeek. But in all cases, I'm just doing exactly the same thing. And so the end result is this. So the end result is, this is the HTML document in the pair, right? And it says, okay, here's what you're looking at. It's about the semantic web, a new form of web content that is meaningful to computers that will unleash a revolution of new possibilities.
We're seeing the PDF in a whole new way.
Yes.
Your little skill and an LLM went through, read the PDF, and is displaying it in a completely different way than 25 years ago.
Yes. And so in a sense, what the skill is doing fundamentally is taking notes, right? It's literally reading the document and taking notes and organizing the notes in structured form. So typically when I come across documents, the first thing I really want to get to is, get me to the FAQ, break it down. What are the key questions and answers in the document, right? For instance. And so
time out. Because this magic, I mean, people in the AI world understand what you just did, but it turned the article, figured out what the key things that article is presenting, and made an FAQ, frequently asked questions, automatically for you.
Automatically. And a glossary.
So this helps you learn if you're trying to read something very technical or very deep or very long. This
Yes.
this really helps you understand what that article's about in a whole new way.
Yeah. So if you think about, so what is the essence, or what's the key example given in the Scientific American article? It's about the journey of Pete and Lucy, right? So it says, the article opens with a vivid vignette. Lucy's Semantic Web agent. I mean, this was 2001. Semantic Web agent, right, autonomously handles a complex multi-database, multi-agent healthcare scheduling task. Hey, OpenClaw, 2001. Think about that.
Yeah.
You see, so and
There's
that's the
been,
beauty.
Doug Engelbart was 20 years ahead of the world with showing off this
Absolutely,
hypertext idea a long time ago.
absolutely.
It's taken this long for his dream to get expressed fully, right?
Absolutely.
And Tim Berners-Lee,
And
same
absolutely the mother of all demos, and it is still the mother of all demos to this very moment.
Yeah.
Because each time you peel back the layers of that onion, so for instance, it was a tragedy to say that, oh, Doug's demo was about the mouse. No, he had to make a mouse so that he could show you what hyperlinking and hypertext was about. I mean, how would you do that without a mouse, without a pointing device?
Yeah.
Right? But most of the world took
you
away.
got a blue link on your screen. You didn't have a mouse or some sort of way to click on it with a screen or something.
Exactly. Without the pointing device, then the link doesn't come to life. And the other thing Doug always understood is that this is about augmentation of human intellect. It was never replacement. It was augmentation of human intellect. All right. So anyway, back to this document. If so there's the journey that Pete and Lucy take, but there's also an ability to look at, okay, the technologies. Here are the different technologies. Looking at the use cases. Okay, so again, you may quickly go through the FAQs, and more often than not, people are looking for use cases, right? Here's a new technology, how do I use it? And again, from that article, it's able to distill specific use cases, right? Specific use cases all the way to the evolution of human knowledge, which was something I was speaking about earlier on, right? So anyone can mint a new concept.
And this was all created automatically by your skill with LLM.
Yes.
Like in DeepSeek in this case.
Yeah. No, so in this particular case, so here's how I remember, right, what was done. So if you look at this, so this little browsing interface, right, this itself was built. This was built by an LLM. I just told it, look, what I want you to do is create a rendition of the Finder, the macOS Finder, so that when I go to look at my documents locally, so I'm going to show you what I mean. I don't want to see this, right? Oh, sorry. Yeah, let me pick that out. So I don't want that. You see that?
Yeah.
I mean, this is what a normal browser gives to you when you say to it, okay, look up, documents on my local hard drive, right? And most people kind of always think that, well, whenever you're looking at HTML or hyperlinks or hypertext, it's got to be from some server in the cloud, not really knowing that you can run all of this locally.
Yeah.
Right.
Like and if you use or Hermes.
But you don't need a web server. You don't need, what I'm saying is you just need a browser and files, because they're just files in a file system.
Yeah.
Right. And the browser gives that to you, but it gives that to you in a very sort of rudimentary, rough interface. Whereas I've just said, okay, you know what? I'm tired of that interface. Make it look like the Finder, because it's just files and folders on my machine. And so I literally had an LLM, based on my directions, build this alternative view of that. That's just an alternative view.
If we're talking about it, I like to talk that this is like Web 4.0. It's a new web. The AI built you a new web browser.
Yes, for my local documents.
For your instructions, right? So how you learn, how you want to view your world, you can just prompt to an LLM and say, build me a system.
Yeah, because since I work with multiple LLMs, right? So you can kind of see my tree.
Yeah.
I've got LLMs, so I've got my documents, I've got LLMs, and I've got, okay, this was generated by Claude, this was generated by DeepSeek, this was generated by, GPT-5 and so on, that, and then I have my web pages, I have my RDF documents and things like that. So that's how I tend to organize my worldview. But now, going one step further, right? We have, let's say, terms, we have ontologies or whatever. So if I click on that, we're now going away. This is the link. I'm going away from, okay, a conventional HTML document generated by an AI skill into the knowledge base created through using RDF that was uploaded to my particular platform, Virtuoso. So Virtuoso is a product from OpenLink Software that provides data space management, where a data space is either a database, a knowledge base, file system documents, or APIs. And it does all of this using the power of hyperlinks that have been dormant based on what the semantic web is about. So in a sense, I'm using the power always promised of a semantic web to change the nature of data, information, and knowledge management.
Yeah.
And so this is an artifact. You're looking at this point into a Virtuoso instance from a link in that document. And it's simply saying, okay, you want to know this is what an ontology is. But where did this come from, right? So it's saying it demonstrates the use of agent interoperability. Pete and Lucy's healthcare scheduling scenario, right?
Yeah.
It's semantic web technology. It depends on RDF. It's telling you, here's what I am, so to speak, right? And if I go back to that scenario, then you have, the use case, right? That we're looking at. And that use case was a part of key capabilities and use cases. You see what I'm doing? I'm now working my way back, right, to the original document that we're looking at through a different interface. So again, it says, okay, here are the authors of that document, right? It's part of Scientific American, volume 284, number 5, May 2001. It's a scholarly article now. So here's what a semantic web is really all about, right? This just happens to be one scholarly article of interest, but it's not the only scholarly article in my knowledge base. So the moment I click on that, it is now going to say, haha, guess what? There are many other scholarly articles. Look at that. And not just look at that, we've got 16 pages, right?
Yeah.
Of different scholarly articles. And as I said to you, I come from a strong database background, and I really liked Access. So you can kind of see some of its navigational capabilities from its UI of yore. There's a scrollable cursor and so on. But anyway, forget about the technical stuff. You can kind of see that all of a sudden, I can pivot from the scholarly article about the semantic web into a whole range of other scholarly articles if that took my interest. You see that?
Yeah.
All right. So anyway, so back, to where we are. And
now
so
we went from the semantic web article that Tim Berners-Lee
and Co. Yep.
You RDF'd it to make a new user interface. And then you clicked a link that took you into your own data set that you've been building for years. Could you also do a RAG lookup then and have
that's the point.
Agent go out to the entire internet and find anything that has to do with what you're trying to get?
Yes.
I know the answer because I'm doing this with my agent. I'm building RAG lookups of various things.
But the key thing is I can answer. See, the thing is, I can answer questions and not worry about hallucinations because the knowledge graph has structured the information specifically so that when I ask a question, it knows, look, I have FAQs. So he's asking a question. He may phrase a question in some fuzzy way just because of the nature of natural language, but an LLM can build an index very quickly from my knowledge base and determine, well, this fuzzy question he's asking really relates to an FAQ. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to narrow the search for the answer to FAQs because I know it's a question. You see
Could
that?
you tilt up the camera, by the way, just a little bit so I can see your eyes?
Yeah. Yeah. Okay,
There you
that's me sitting. It's me sitting too far forward, I think.
No, that's cool.
Yeah. So now, but let me show you how this actually makes its way. How it actually makes its way. So here's another interface, right? And so this again is the virtuoso system, because the virtuoso system combines the HTTP capabilities that you would expect of an IIS with Microsoft or Apache, any web server. But it combines that with the relational database management capabilities that you would expect of a SQL Server, of an Oracle, or whatever. It has all of that.
Yeah.
But it also goes beyond that, and it has the, give me a second. I've just dropped something. Give me a second. I'm back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just dropped something. Sorry.
No, that's cool.
Can you hear me?
Yep. You're still here.
Yeah. So, and it also has the knowledge management capabilities of what I refer to as graph databases. So you can write in SQL, you can write in Sparkle, you can write in GraphQL, but the key thing is you have access to all of this knowledge. And the way that knowledge makes its way into the database is simply by taking those documents from my local drive and dropping them to a folder, right? So I've got this folder, it means data as a service folder. But I'm going to show you my native desktop. So let's cancel whatever that is. Ignore that. And then I'm going to say, okay, let's go take a look at, this is now using the native WebDAV functionality from macOS, right? Yep. So that was the same thing we just looked at. You see that?
Yep.
So I'll flip that across. Right? You're looking at the same thing, different ways. And all I do fundamentally is if I go, I go to documents, you pretty much see my, right? Remember that whole structure that I said, replicate this in HTML?
Yeah.
That, that interface, that's the same thing. So you can kind of see there's Claude, there's GPT-5 and so on and so forth. So if I go in here, if that was, all right, so you can see there's the HTML document. All right, so there's the HTML document, and then the RDF document is here. So if I go there, right, and I literally just drag and drop. So once I drag and drop to this folder, it's uploaded to the underlying knowledge base, and then it's available, through a whole myriad of interfaces. This interface here is a query, meaning using the Sparkle query language into the same knowledge base. So when I click on something like, if I click here, it says, okay, there's a publication, right? If I click on there, what do you think you're going to see? We're back, right? We're back to that journey we took earlier on, and then back there to the same document. See that?
Yeah.
And that's hyperlinks functioning as super keys in a modern database where the keys are no longer proprietary native identifiers that create silos. Hyperlinks are replacing those primary keys and foreign keys in the conventional relational database approach. And they're becoming super keys so they can dereference data wherever it is on the relevant HTTP network. So that could be a private enterprise intranet, or that could be the public web. Doesn't really matter. And I can query the query language. I have a query language that's SQL-like in nature, but has this benefit. So if I want to sort of show you the syntax, and imagine this, I can go straight from a hyperlink, right, to the actual query syntax, which is what I'm about to do right now. So I'm just going to change a parameter in the URL, right? Sorry, give me a second, I did that wrong. Or I could even just use just make that even easier. See that? That's
Yeah.
that's just showing me the query. And then let me do that again. I don't know whatever happened there, but oh yeah, I went to the wrong parameter. It's this one. Yeah, see that? So you can see you can see both queries side by side.
Yep.
Right. So if I close that, right there, and so that's the query. So basically, here's what this query is saying. This query is basically saying, okay, what I want you to do is I want you to select type. I want you to apply a sampling function to entity, and then alias that is, sample entity when you print out the output, and then apply a count on entity and say that's the entity count. And the key thing is that the data source or the knowledge graph or the name graph, there are a variety of labels for the data source. But the key thing is the data source is this thing that's identified using this URL.
Yeah.
It's just that the URL in this particular case is now used as an internal identifier in this particular database for where the triples reside.
How many of these data knowledge bases do you have? You have one up in the cloud or a bunch in the cloud?
Well, so here's the story. Well, here's a good question.
This is very nerdy. Normal people.
No, there are bajillions of them.
Yeah.
You see, in 2000, there are bajillions because in 2007.
At Microsoft, we used to call that shitloads.
In 2007,
yeah,
as part of trying to deal with the difficulties that the semantic web vision was having with its uptake, one of the things that the community did, built around this particular product, Virtuoso, was to create DBpedia. And DBpedia was a knowledge graph built using linked data principles, which means using hyperlinks to construct those triples based on the content of Wikipedia. And so the whole idea was that if you showed Wikipedia's content as a semantic web, people will start to understand the value because they'll realize that you can have a hyperlink denoting familiar entities like, okay, Paris has, a hyperlink that denotes it. And so does London, or so does New York. And they would put that in the browser, and then they'll get this rich page coming back, no different to what I showed a few moments ago, of information about the relevant city.
Yeah.
And then they'll realize that, well, we hoped that like back in the days with HTML, you will remember this, that in the days of HTML, the way HTML really took off was, it wasn't that people magically understood HTML. Even with the Netscape browser, they didn't magically understand HTML markup. What happened was they could go view source. And so they would view source on a page and they could copy the HTML and it looked, readable, and they could change certain elements in the HTML.
I learned how to code HTML, right?
Exactly. Yeah. They'll change a few things and then they'll save it to a local web server, or actually not even a local web server, to your local file. As long as you have a browser, you then open the file like I did earlier on, and then you're going to say, oh, okay, I've made, a modification to that page that I was looking at. Yeah, and that's what we call, and that's the universality of a file system coming into play. And that same file system is coming into play right now in this age of AI and AI agents and AI agent skills.
Yeah.
Right? That is, as you saw what I did, I told the LLM, produce some documents in different formats. It produced those documents, and then I shoved those formats to a folder that I mounted, and that triggers an upload to a backend database management system, right? That understands the data presented and knows how to organize it for handling queries using either Sparkle, or I can do all of this in SQL. Because if you look at the structure of this query, you can see it's very similar to SQL.
Yep.
Right? And so I literally put this in a SQL query in a where clause as just, another view, so to speak, a derived view. is derived on the fly, and that's it. The result set itself is a table, and that's pretty much all a SQL wants. It wants the relation to be tabular in its structure. Don't want to go too nerdy, but they gel very, very naturally. And so we've seen many aspects, but there's still one more intriguing part, which is, okay, another tension with the notion of a semantic web or its fundamental vision is that the business model side. So first of all, the concept wasn't, broadly understood, but even worse, it wasn't.
I had to read that article a couple of times and I still didn't understand it back in 2000.
Yes, but as you know, there are other people in the industry. So let's say the investor community.
Yeah.
They may not necessarily understand the technicalities of a technology, but they tend to have a good nose for the implication of markets and market dynamics, right? And so with the semantic web, it was very difficult, in my opinion, for them to really clearly understand the market opportunity implications for this, right? And so again, LLMs have not only made it simpler to understand and use by taking away the tedium associated with generation of RDF in particular, but it also makes it a lot easier to understand the dynamics of markets and market opportunities that also flow through the semantic web vision that deliver what I call fairer and broader markets than anything that Web 2.0 has offered.
Yeah.
Right. And so very simply, if we go back.
Why you say that? Where do you think this new web is going? And now that we have AI and robotics coming and brain computer interfaces coming.
Well, not yet to robotics. Robotics will slip on will slip onto this naturally. But here are two documents, right?
Because soon I'm going to be talking to a humanoid robot in my kitchen, and it's going to do a lot of stuff for me.
But yes, because when all is said and done, right? So to some degree, a computer is a robot. It's a machine. Yeah. And a lot of what we're doing in this session is still driven by skills. See, the fundamental unit of economic value is not even the fact that there's an LLM. So the frontier model is not the thing anymore. The AI agent is kind of like the handle. If you use Gillette's business model, right? Gillette's approach to business, you got a handle and you got the razors, right? So the AI agents, the CoWorks, the OpenClaws, the Codexes of the world, they're kind of like the handle, right? And they got some value, but the razors, the replaceable razors, they create, the real economy. Right? Because those things have to be replaced. As I said to you earlier on, data, knowledge, information are fluid by their very nature, right? And so and likewise, human skill, competency, domain expertise from trials, tribulations, and experience, right? So a human being who is a domain expert has a combination of experiences and skill sets that they put together. But AI allows that skill set to be loosely coupled with databases, information, data or databases, knowledge bases, file systems, APIs, that it can be loosely coupled to create that blade, so to speak. So you have an agent as a handle, whether it's CoWork from Anthropic, whether it's Codex from OpenAI, DeepSeek, you name it. They're all handles, and they all have the ability to work with skills, where these skills are a combination of expertise and data spaces, right? Packaged together.
Yeah.
And they're time sensitive, so you can never pin them down. And then you look at what I have on the screen right now.
Yeah.
I have a skill that can produce, so there's a skill that can produce these documents.
Yeah.
But these documents, so the skill itself doesn't necessarily have to be free of charge, although I give it away free of charge. But it doesn't have to be. That's just a choice I've made, right?
So a skill is something that tells an LLM how to do something.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, exact. So if you think about your robot, what's really
Yeah.
going to happen with your robot is the robot's going to have these little cartridges, right, for different capabilities that it's going to have, and you're going to slot them in, right, for whatever it is you need the robot to do. The robot's
Virtually.
not,
Yeah.
right. The robot's going to have some default
The optimist,
capabilities.
you clean my toilets, and that'll be a skill that
Exactly.
gets downloaded. And
Right.
oh, okay, now I know how to clean your toilets, right?
Yeah,
Or
but then you may want it to clean it
clothes.
a specific way, right? You want to use a specific style, right? Or you've got a particular model of toilet, right? And that model of toilet may come with its own cartridge, right, for optimized cleaning. But the key thing is just still the form factor of what you're using is a blade, right?
Yeah.
That's why this model is timeless. And that blade is a combination of domain expertise procedures working on data, information, and knowledge, right? Packaged in different ways, but that's the key thing. So you slot in the skill, and the robot or the agent or the computer now has these new capabilities, just like I've been showing. Now,
So
you
if you're
can
an information
monetize.
worker, you might have a group of skills to help you go through the web or through even
Exactly.
text.
Or any, so you've heard of the
And
phrase.
people like me who are building information systems, my mind is going as you're talking, because I built a news site called alignnews.com,
Correct.
right? And it reads 40,000 tweets or posts a day and builds a news feed of events and papers and models and
But it's
hot
missing
headlines.
something. But it's missing one thing.
Yeah, a
It's
lot.
missing Scoble's knowledge base. Meaning, okay, you can subscribe to the RSS newsfeed. I used to bug you about that. You solved that. So
Yeah,
that exists, right? There's an RSS feed, right?
yeah,
That's solved. Then there are also the newsletters that those feeds take you to, or there's just the news that you're aggregating across X, right? So whether you're coming to a post on X or your newsletter, it doesn't matter. You're reading some words, right? You're reading articles,
yeah,
right? But those articles, sitting beneath those articles is a pool of knowledge. And that pool of knowledge, that is the fuel of AI, because as I said earlier on, AI is going to be eternally dependent on the quality of data, information, and knowledge. There's never going to be a point in time where those three things become static. They're
yeah,
inherently fluid. You see that? There's always new data, there's always new information, and there's always new knowledge.
yeah,
So the ability to package those things in conjunction with procedures for operating on them in different scenarios, that's what the skill is all about. And so you monetize the skill. And the
yeah,
monetization of the skill can be in two forms. It could be a combination of the skill itself and the data that it operates on. Or it could just be, okay, the skill is free, but to access the knowledge or the information or the data that it operates on, you pay a price, right? And the beauty of the semantic web in all of this is that it's left on a platter, an easy way to do this.
yeah,
You may have heard about, the newfound love and interest in HTTP 402,
yeah,
right? So 404, the document's not found, right? 401, you're not allowed to look at a document.
yeah,
402, you can look at a document if you pay for it. All right?
yeah,
You see that? That's been sitting on the shelf since day one. And as I said, there's been this tension between the web itself and the connectivity that the web provides and business models. And that tension was only compounded when Tim and co were talking about, well, this web that you're already sort of excited about on one front, but confused about on the business model front, there was another evolution of it called the semantic web. And then the people are saying, well, we haven't quite figured out, and this is advertising business models. We
yeah,
haven't even figured out the business model for this thing, and you're telling us there's something else. And so that too was another another leg in a tension stool that impeded the uptake of the semantic web, a business model tension. But what I'm describing right now also shows you in this age of AI and skills how monetization on this sort of agentic web, you call it Web 4.0. I tend to look at it as, an agentic web that is, buoyed or built on a semantic web that has been growing stealthily. Thank heavens the community has stayed with it, right?
Yeah.
So it's been growing stealthily, the DBpedias, the Wikidatas, and a bajillion other data spaces that most of the world isn't necessarily aware of, but will discover serendipitously because of the nature of those data sources. They're going to discover the ability to create new data markets, new data products, but most important of all, the use of skills as a form factor, so that it becomes very easy. So if you simply look at a file and simply say, okay, all I have to do is change an attribute on a file, and then that file can start a workflow that ends up with a payment with Stripe as a payment processor, because Stripe themselves are already major supporters of 402, and they've already built infrastructure to make all of this happen naturally. So my agent could be wandering across the web, encounters one of your articles, then decides, okay, I want to segue from the article into Scoble's knowledge base for this particular topic. Then it's told, well, hang on, you got to pay for that because it spends a lot of time putting that together, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and the agent says, okay, I'll pay for that, right? Microcent or whatever, and it pays for that. But then Scoble might say, well, but that's just on a quarterly basis because, this stuff changes frequently. And so do you want to subscribe for a quarter? Do you want to subscribe for a year? Right?
Yeah.
That kind of thing. It becomes what I call basic common sense merchandising of goods and services, right? In a web that is friendly to this kind of commerce.
Yeah.
And it's not only the platform providers, right, sort of controlling the scale, so to speak, of commerce, which is a big problem right now. There's an imbalance where the platform providers understand how they're going to make money.
Yeah.
But the people contributing the content increasingly are more and more clueless by the second. Okay.
No, and it gets harder because the algorithms are changing the business.
Correct. That's what I mean. Yeah. So
and what it does, and
you're at the mercy.
Where is the value, right?
Exactly. So you're at the mercy of an algorithm. So what I was mentioning just now is, so here, for instance, is just an example. So so here's a link, right? This is just an example. Let me just show you where the link is coming from. So we're back. So again, it's the same interface. It's just a different folder, right? On a different server. But the key point is that if I click to see that text, right? You see that? I get, and then I say, okay, I want to request access. You see what it does?
Yeah.
Right? But what's really going on behind the scenes? I'm going to show you what's really going on behind the scenes so that you look at it in what we call headless mode. All right. So I'm just going to clear all of that. And I'm just going to say curl minus. And again, normally I don't even have to type this. I can tell an agent to do this, even to just, so anyway.
Yeah, we don't want to be nerdy anymore. We want to just talk to our agents running on an OpenClaw or something, or Hermes.
Exactly. Exactly.
Or
but the key thing is that at the HTTP protocol level, right, you can still have this same interaction that I'm having visually through an HTML page.
Yeah.
Right. And so if I was to click and say buy, what it's literally going to do right now is it's going to place me. See that? It's going to place me. Okay, you wanna buy? Okay, pay for it. You see that?
Yeah.
Right? Pay for it. And so, and all you have to do in this particular case, right, is simply just alter the attributes of a file.
Yeah.
Right? You're just altering the attributes of a file to say, okay, I want to, so let me show you what I even mean. So here's a file. So let me go in that way. So, okay, so now let me go in as someone who can actually alter that file. Yeah, so. And notice, it supports a whole broad collection of protocols. So it's not about, I can only log in with Google login, or I can only log in with Apple login, which is also becoming a bit of a problem that people aren't realizing. You're only having fewer and fewer choices for authenticating, which means you're losing control of your identity. Now,
Yeah.
I don't mind using any of those services, but I don't really want them to be my only options either, right?
Yeah.
So here's an example of how I would set up a fine-grained attribute-based access control. And I would say something like, okay, add, and I could just simply say, well, this is for a specific person. And then all I would have to do is, you see, it's doing a drop down of different users on the system. For instance, I could pick a URL for someone, or I could say, you know what, it's a little bit more advanced than that. I'm going to scope it to a group, or I just want the public, or I can say, you know what, this is really advanced right now. And what I really want to do is I maybe want to scope this to an attribute in a certificate. I may want to have a certificate that has a hyperlink as part of its structure. Or, you know what, I want to just write a Sparkle query. I want to write a Sparkle query that says, you know what, if you claim to know Scoble, and Scoble also claims to know you, then you can access the document free of charge. And anyone else, you got to pay. You see that?
Wow. So it gives you a lot of flexibility on access.
But that's what a semantic web is about.
Yeah.
Right? See that? And now it's giving me yet another view.
Very flexible web, and it's endless how you can dig into it, right?
Yes. And so that's the point, right? The point is that you have this vision that's been misunderstood, but thanks to LLMs right now, in a sense, the vision was waiting for AI in the form of what LLMs offered, and specifically being that LLMs handle the fuzziness of natural language, one, and then they make natural language a new component of computing's UI UX. And in doing so, they take away all of the hurdles, right, that impeded the ability to actually understand what was articulated in that document. And a lot of the web's current shortcomings, all of the challenges with identity, user-controlled profiling, or profiles, pardon me, user-controlled preferences, the ability to monetize, as we've just demonstrated, and so on, those challenges without a semantic web are not going anywhere other than the next big silo, right? And so if you want this balancing effect where everyone can participate in the real value offered by the web, then the only solution really is to buy into what the semantic web gives you, because LLMs take away all the impedance. So you really have no reason, because there's nothing complicated about it with LLMs in the mix. You simply need to describe whatever it is that you want to do. But you can do business, you can do commerce without being held captive to algorithms.
Yeah. That's a big dream. And it's here.
Exactly. That's what people
25
want.
years.
Exactly. Right. So it's
it's
nice, simple, and easy to use.
This is, do you call this the Web 4.0, or do you have another name for it? Or you just call it?
I tend to say it's an agentic web, that in a sense, the web has morphed into an agentic web, right?
And notice we didn't talk about how an agent could do all this, because an agent could do all this as well.
No, but what I'm saying to you, this is really, really important.
Yeah.
Everything that I've demonstrated was being done by an agent. It's just that I focused on a skill.
Yeah.
So again, the agent is the handle, the razor handle, and the skill is the blade, right? Yeah. So remember when I sort of flicked through, so if you go back again. So for instance, so here's an example where I'm saying using the URI bonnet in knowledge graph mode, right? So my skill builds a very tight harness that when you say you're going in knowledge graph mode, it's saying there are no circumstances where you jump out to the LLM's knowledge base, database, anything. You either operate in this little control gate, right? Or you say, okay, you know what? I couldn't answer the question.
Yeah.
But you have to ask me or seek permission from me to let the LLM then have a go itself at the question. You see that?
Yeah.
And so that's what you're seeing me do here, where after I've generated, these documents that end up creating a knowledge graph, I'm asking questions, right? And I'm even doing things. So if you look what I'm doing here specifically, I'm saying, I want to really make it fuzzy. So I'm saying, provide 5 variants of the following sentence, right? Why did consumer platforms compound faster than enterprise systems? And he says, okay, here are 5 variants of that particular question. Then I take the most obscure, right, of those questions, and then I throw it at the system to see if it's going to get me the answer that I'm expecting to receive. And it does. But when it does it, it's also able to tell me, look, not only here is the answer, here's where I got the answer from. You see that?
Yeah. And unfortunately, I'm late for another meeting. We've been going for an hour and a half.
But I think we're done.
We're done. I think we are. Well, I could spend a few hours with you learning how to work with the web in a whole new way. And that's what this is all about.
Yeah, but it's all about, so it's agents, skills, and data spaces.
It's pretty simple.
It's very simple.
And AI unlocks it all.
Yes, exactly.
Well, thank you so much for showing me this new web.
So take care. All right, Robert.
And just to finish up, how do we, what's your business model, and what would customers come to see you for?
Well, good question. So if you want a platform that replicates everything that I described, that's what Virtuoso will do for you. But if you also want to work with other components of the web, then Virtuoso is a place you're going to look up. It's part of the mix for you. So you have DBpedia, and like I said, a bajillion other data spaces that are already in this form. They're already, in RDF, deployed using linked data, part of the linked open data cloud. If you're an enterprise and you're trying to create semantic layers that answer questions like, what's the canonical customer? Right? Who or what is a competitor? Right? Those are questions that have challenged databasing forever and still challenge databasing right now. The Virtuoso platform handles all of that using the kind of capabilities that I've just demonstrated. So from a business model perspective, we sell a data spaces platform or a universal server called Virtuoso. It's multi-model in nature, meaning it handles relational databases conventionally, but it also handles knowledge bases and knowledge graphs, and it also handles file system functionality. So you install it, you have the ability to build the kind of business models that I'm demonstrating, but at the same time, we're also giving partners the ability to accelerate the move from monolithic functionality that they have right now in their applications to these loosely coupled skills, so that from a market defensibility perspective, they're able to hold ground in their marketplaces by giving their customers the tools for what's coming next with AI. So rather than saying, okay, we're a monolith and we're going to just put an agent around the monolith, they have the ability to say, oh, wait a minute, we actually have functionality that can be broken down into skills and can offer us new business models that are also very compatible with the needs of our customers, right? So there's a direct approach, there's an indirect approach, and then ultimately we also provide, hosted services, but more along the software as service rather than SaaS, which is, software as a service. So It's more to do with this new play of saying, look, when you combine procedures or domain expertise and data spaces, you create these skills. But in a sense, if you think about professional services, what you've really done is you've created a professional services package. I think I hear, Palantir calls this forward deployed engineers. That's another term that I've come across in my travels. But the key thing is we package skills. So there are skills that are packaged that you can also buy to help galvanize your enterprise. So that's the business side of of open link software in this new age of AI.
Well, thank you
And
so much.
Yep. Okay. So thank you.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks. I learned a lot, and thank you so much.
Yeah, and a nice trip down memory lane.